This is not about me. So let's refocus because I got 2 burning questions I want to ask you.
Well, that's a sick guitar, man. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But check them out. I like it. So it's pretty cool, especially for the money. 2 questions. Best gig, worst gig.
Oh, man. All right. Let's see here. Best gig. I can't say if there was like one absolute best one, but I can tell you one really good moment I had that was just one of those moments where I thought I was going to cry on stage in a good way. And that was in October. What year was that? It was probably like the poster's back here behind me. You can't see it on the screen, but it was when I was on tour with Noah Preminger, and he was doing the tour with my band. And for the Xavier concert series here in Cincinnati, we actually got to have Gary Versace on piano with us as a special guest. And Gary was somebody, like Noah, that I'd been listening to since college. Like I found Noah's music through discovering Ben Monder and listening to his entire discography. And playing with Noah was amazing. But then Gary I'd been listening to forever too, just on different recordings, like with Maria Schneider and all these small group recordings. And then when I got to have him play my music, I was like kind of nervous. I was like, man, this is crazy. Not really any rehearsal. Just brought the charts, and they're not really easy tunes by any means. So, he's incredible, but I didn't know that I would expect. I didn't expect like these profound things to happen to my music with him sitting at the piano, and there was a few moments on that concert in particular. I felt like I played horribly because I was just so awestruck by what he was doing with my music. It was just so beautiful. Like there was just some things happening, and I remember Matt playing bass. Like there was this moment in one of my tunes where Gary he took off in another direction, and it just like this whole new song emerged out of this song, and we all just kind of like we were like, yeah, this is what's going to happen, and let's just go with it. And then like I remember Matt, I could feel him like in the back of my head, I was like, he's going to cry, and I was like, now I'm going to cry. And then like after the show, we were like, yeah, we almost totally broke down and just started crying right there because it's so beautiful. It's just like this symphony came out of Gary in the middle of all this madness, and awesome. It was just a really beautiful moment. There was the worst gig. This is a pretty funny story because technically the gig never happened. I got 2 worst gigs, and maybe one of them I shouldn't say at all, but like the worst gig was when I first moved to Cincinnati. I got an email from a guy that was like, hey, you're new to town, blah, blah, blah. I run a big band, and he's like a Sinatra impersonator or something. And he's like, I got a gig in Berea, Kentucky, which is like 2 hours south of here. And he's like, it's blah, blah date. Can you do it? He's like, it pays really well. That's all he said. It pays really well. And of course, me being young and hungry, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then as it got closer to the gig, it got like the demands were too high. Like he kept wanting me to like FaceTime him and play through these charts for him to make sure I could play him. But it's just like basic big band charts, which I was just straight up like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, it's just a waste of time. And then finally, like a week before the gig, like he sends the details, and he's like, the gig, we're going to arrive at 9 a.m. and set up, and because it's for some event, sound check at noon, wear a tux. We're going to play from 6 to 10 p.m. And it's like the whole day, and the pay is like $60. And I was just like, wait a second. He said it pays amazing. It's like, I'll play for nothing if it's like with my friends and playing good music and chill and like a good time and like something I'm invested in. But it's like I know how much those kind of gigs bring in, like for the band leader. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it was pretty clear this dude was ripping everybody off. And I was like, in good conscience sub this gig out to any of my friends who also play guitar, because that would be an insult to them. So I just didn't go. I was just like, this dude's doing everybody dirty. And like, it came to find out, he's like considered like a not good guy to work with here in town. But I made the right call apparently when I relayed that story to other musicians when I got to know more people in town. But that was a funny one. But another gig was actually the same tour with Noah Preminger, and we had a gig at an unnamed club in Northeast Ohio. But basically, we got tricked into playing a dinner gig for the door, and they just did, like, basically, long story short, Matt almost got in a fist fight with the booking guy because basically we played the same kind of gig we could play here in town for like a dinner crowd and each get $125, but the guy kind of duped us into being like, oh, well, our main room is not open, so you guys can play on the patio, even though that's not what we agreed to on the contract or whatever. And he's like, oh, it's being renovated, so you can go play on the patio for the dinner crowd and we'll take cover there. And basically, he didn't collect cover from everybody. He allowed people to not pay cover if they didn't want to. And we ended up getting like $20 or something, this is like an insulting amount of money. And, and yeah, Matt almost just got in a fight with the guy. And I was like, let's just cut our losses and get out of here. Like, this is just embarrassing. Yeah. But, you know, I've played that place before with other people and it's been fine, but it just kind of it made me feel bad because, you know, it's my thing. And I know I'm not famous or anything. So it's too often, I think, guys in that position of, it's not really a position of power because I know it's a stressful position to be in, to be like booking bands, but it's a hard place to be in. Like I didn't have a name to command respect from the guy.
Yeah, right.
Like I know like how he was feeling too. So like, but just being pushed around like that just wasn't fun. I was like, I don't really want to go back there anymore.
That reminds me, I played a gig in Chicago. Where was that? I can't remember the name of the place. And we had like booked it a couple, months in advance or whatever, and we were gonna get so much money. But the guy that booked us actually was like out of the country. So when we got there, which we didn't, I guess Paul knew, because I was playing with Paul Stranahan's trio thing, and or no, it was a quartet. So we all went out there. We played in like Toledo and Chicago and this like little mini tour. We played there, and like they didn't advertise it. Like they didn't, like, there was no help like at all. Of course we didn't command a lot of attention in Chicago. And when we got done with the gig, the guy that we booked with wasn't there. He was out of the country or something. So the people were there were like, okay, well, you owe us
no
this much money. It was like the Blues Brothers thing or whatever. It's like, well, you owe us this much for this. So luckily, I don't know how we talked ourselves out of, like, basically we got paid nothing.
Yeah.
It was just, and I think it was a couple $100 or something we were going to get. It wasn't like crazy, but.
Right. Yeah. That's
we drove all the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's rough, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a way of, that happens all too often. I feel definitely. I think the only time I've ever really played in Chicago, I played in a basement, somebody's basement.
You probably made more than I did. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, like, it was like a pass the hat kind of situation. Total, like, probably illegal show scenario. Mm-hmm. But it was just trying to network, and none of the clubs. It's kind of it's hard. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this too, existing in like this creative guitar world where your original music isn't exactly straight ahead jazz, but it's not like rock enough to be in a rock club, but it's not jazz enough to be in the jazz club. And it makes it really challenging to book, really. So I found
definitely
a lot of times I'll just end up booking like a house show or something, which sometimes honestly is like more fun than playing at a club.
Oh yeah,
especially, yeah.
Right. Yeah, you know what? I think I've heard like Holdsworth talk about that too, where there's some interview and they're like, well, why don't you just write a pop tune or whatever? But his take was like, well, I think people might actually like it if they put my song on the radio. Like there'd probably be a crowd for it if you actually played it, but no one will play it. And I kind of feel the same, like the kind of music we typically make. It's like when people were there, they seemed to enjoy it. It makes me think that if you get people there, they would enjoy it. You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, man, it's just
That's exactly like I just had a conversation with the guy. I'm sorry, Brandon. I don't mean to interrupt. You were going to say
good. You're good. I was just going to agree.
Well, just to kind of piggyback on the agreement, I literally had this conversation with a guy that I'm working on with another tune, and we were arguing because I was like push it a little bit more avant-garde and out there. I'm like, you know, and he's like, well, what about marketability and so on? And I'm like, well, look at Queen. I mean, that was the first. I'm like, Bohemian Rhapsody was not a typical pop song at the time, not even close. And Freddie Mercury was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. How about no when we release this song? And it ends up being like this huge cultural phenomenon. And I'm not saying I have a cultural phenomenon sitting in my back pocket, but I think that we dumb people down to what they would actually like if they get exposed to it. Like from the marketing perspective. And that was my chief thing. I'm like, listen, I understand your point, but my point is I don't think people are that stupid. I really don't. You know, I think they just haven't heard it before. And once you get it out there, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I think all of us experience that as players and as listeners, that it's like we got we hear this off track, you know, one of our friends has or whatever, like way back when we were starting, we're like, oh, that's actually really cool. And it's somebody you've never heard of. And you just start diving down that rabbit hole and going and discovering more things that you never would have had you sat there and just gotten your top 10 continual replays.
Absolutely, and I think that manifests itself too in the live playing scenario. Like I find that another kind of perspective on that is I find often like when playing in bigger cities, like that are known for having music, like an audience can sometimes take music for granted. Like, oh, music's here all the time. This is music. Yeah, it's cool. And then like maybe you don't get a lot of visceral feedback from the crowd. But anytime I've played a small town, that's like where the real shit, like it feels like people are digging it hard. Like I used to play these gigs down in Frankfort, Kentucky. Me and Matt would go down, and the mayor of Frankfort's a great drummer. And he would just have me and Matt come down, and sometimes there'd be trumpet player Marlon McKay. And we just play like some Herbie tunes and shit. Super small town, like little bar. There's people with like, you know, half a mouth of teeth or whatever, just like, hell yeah, man, that's sick. And it's like getting stoked. Yeah. And it's just, you never know. Like, and I think that at the end of the day, all humans crave like this kind of raw kind of thing that's just based on emotion, and it can be as weird as you want it to be. But I think, yeah, like it's the marketability factor of just like, oh, here's this nice little package of things, and that's what we're going to say works for everybody. But I think most people crave like that human element, whether they know it or not. I remember going.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I was going to say I went to a jam session once, and I was playing some gigs in Tennessee several years ago, and this dude walks in, like me being a city boy now, I might have thought, oh man, this guy's like a roughneck. He might, you know, get some fight started or something. But he had a trumpet case on, but totally like not like dressed like in like the jazz guy walking in. And he steps up and is like, oh, let's play like Red Clay or something. And this dude's like probably 50 years old. Like I would have expected him to have like a Confederate flag tattoo or something. But then the dude just straight up sounds like Freddie Hubbard. I was like, this dude is sick. I was like, this guy is amazing. And it really taught me in the moment. I was just like, man, like, because sometimes musicians can be guilty of that kind of like, you know, putting like that, prejudging the aesthetic. And I was just like, this is a pretty revealing moment. And in that moment, I was like, there's a lot to be gleaned from just going to these small towns and playing for people.
That's cool.
It's like really beneficial. Yeah. Because you meet incredible musicians, but also make some lifelong connections, which are really valuable.
Sure.
Yep.
I was just going to say real quick, Brian Baker was, Brian Baker was he was touring with Tils Brenner or whatever that guy is, like a pop artist in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And Tils would like give him a little bit of time at the end of like the set or something to just do his Brian Baker like weird atonal thing, to like 30,000 people. And he like, there was no limits. Like he didn't say like try to do this in this style or that. And Brian just did his thing, and like people loved it.
Yeah.
And talk about like out there, but they got the energy. Like that dude plays with fire.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
like, the regular pop crowd was totally into it.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I think that's true. Like I think that's how people hear music. They hear the energy of it more than the notes even.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree.
So we did the best gig, worst gig thing, and then started our little philosophical take on what people will actually listen to if exposed to it. And that's, I think that's absolutely one of my biggest pet peeves, is the limiting of what people are exposed to because, well, just to put it in perspective, because of what I think they can handle. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, that's one of the, whenever I do a classical concert now, I always get talking about the pieces, even the out there stuff, and just play it. You know, I give them a little bit of the background to it, especially if it's something where it's more of a soundscape thing or a sound picture than an actual melodic thing, just to kind of prepare. But then I just do it. And it gives me the response that I'll get. Like and just to pull off of the whole musician aesthetic thing, like the people that I don't think would be into that because they seem to be like wound a particular way, at least from appearances, are the ones that tend to appreciate it the most. And the other people who I thought would be really into it were like, yeah, no, you know, so, yeah. And that's just the way that it goes. So it's really, it's humbling in a good way, but it's also exciting because there's that plausibility that, hey, somebody out there is definitely going to like this, even though it's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of value in recognizing that, but also, I remember like, I'm super like emotionally invested in the music I make. Like they're like my little music children. And I'm like, when it goes out into the world, if somebody's like, oh, that sucks, I'm always like, oh, who hurt you? You know, right. Like, but like, I remember at one point somebody said, well, if somebody hates it, like really hates it, that means other people really love it. Mm-hmm. And like, just knowing that is like such a good affirmation to remind ourselves of. And yeah, to me, that's been like a really good mantra to try to center that kind of focus on, like when, sure. as it relates to the general public, you know. Yeah, but yeah,
when people talk about like what is art, you know, it's kind of like if everyone likes something, is it art? You know, like it probably yeah. Can't be art. I don't know why, but I don't.
Well, everybody loves macaroni and cheese, and you can definitely make art out of macaroni and cheese.
Macaroni and cheese is like my go-to thing. It's like what I need comfort food. I remember it's just because. All right, it's macaroni and cheese. Tell it. I remember it was like my graduate year, and I'm getting ready for my master's recital, and like my teacher at the time just ripped into me in a lesson, and I deserved it because it was just like falling apart. Not the greatest thing. And, you know, my wife was like, so how did that go? And I was like, that was probably one of my worst lessons that I've had, but I kind of knew it was coming because of the way that I felt going into it, but whatever. And I show up at home and she's got a nice big thing of Stouffer's mac and cheese for me ready to go so I could just like go and cry in the corner and eat it. Get myself back together. So that was great. But all right, that's my mac and cheese story. So
yeah, man, it's got potent healing powers, that's for sure.
They should put that on the label. Potent healing powers. Awesome. So let's see. We've discussed the origins of your playing to an extent. You know, your origin story before you became superhero guitarist, Brandon. Then the scholastic aspect, the gigging aspect, the good and the bad, all the albums releasing, and we got into a little bit of that. So, what would you? I guess my final question would be like, what would you say to somebody that is just trying to get into making their own music and getting it out there? What would be your advice to like that? I guess you could call it that stage of a career.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things you can do is just to completely be, and I guess it's kind of a hard thing to tell somebody to do, is like be confident. But like, I think just being deliberate and like just trying as much as you can is, and putting out as much as you can is really helpful, because for me, I've been putting out music in some form since I was a teenager. Like in the early days of the internet, there were like SoundClick and like these little pages like MySpace when you could upload your songs to it. And as soon as I found that stuff out, and like I was like recording all these little songs, and I would be putting them out there, and people would like it or people wouldn't, and people would comment, and just that getting that feedback loop going was actually really positive. And I felt like if I didn't start doing that then, I might not have had a good like sense of feeling of when it would be right to release something. And like we're saying earlier, like, yeah, I've got this record that I'm still sitting on because of particular things I want to change about it. But everything else that's around that, like, I try to just put out as much as I humanly can, because I'm just writing so much music, and I want to document as much of it as possible. I don't really care as much about how many people buy it, because at the end of the day, even though I make my living with music, like the music that I sell accounts for like a couple Big Macs a year or something. You know, it's like I'd just as soon give it to my friends for free and hand them out like business cards, because for me, the art and making a record is making the document and it kind of surviving after I'm, you know, in a wood box 6 feet underneath the ground. You know,
Sure.
I kind of just want to document all this stuff. And so I'm just trying to do that as much as I possibly can. Like, and I recommend anybody who's got the itch to put out their own music to try to do the same, because everything's not going to be a hit. You never know what is going to be a hit either. Like, you can totally be surprised by, you know, my kind of experience has been, you never know what the result's going to be. Like, I could put out a song like today and maybe nobody hears it, but then tomorrow maybe I put out a different song and then the right person hears it and shares it around the world. And to me, it's just the fact that the internet is so powerful, and you got things like Bandcamp on our side where we can put music out so easily. Why not take advantage of that? And a couple of weeks ago, like, this was a funny one for me, like the idea of just putting out as much as I can. One of my students canceled like midday, and I hadn't like really done a video in a while, like just a casual guitar video. And so I was just practicing like some tunes, and I was playing Infinize by Wayne Shorter, and I just was like, hey, you know, this is a pretty cool take. I was using this guitar my buddy built, and I was kind of going for like a Jeff Beck thing with the whammy bar, and on a ballad, I think that sounds really nice and like vocal. And I just recorded it casually. Like, I didn't run the nice sound or anything. It was just really raw, you know, and I put it on my wall, and then I go to teach, and then I come back like an hour later, and Wayne Shorter had commented on it and shared it, and it had like 200,000 views or something.
Holy crap!
And I was just like, holy cow, this is incredible. And then like a bunch of my buddies were texting me like, holy crap, Wayne Shorter saw your thing. And to me, I was like, you know, I was blown away. I was like flabbergasted that like one of my heroes saw my shit. And for a minute, I was just like really vulnerable, because I was like, man, that wasn't like really amazing playing, or I wasn't doing like the guitar thing that you think you have to do on the internet and play all your impressive like I'm gonna fall off of the guitar neck because I'm going too fast. I was just playing honest stuff. Like I wasn't trying for anything. I was just playing the songs. I love it. And one of my friends was like, "Man, that's probably what he loved about it. Like it was just like an honest, raw, in the moment thing. I didn't overthink it. I wasn't trying to be like, this is how I use double diminished satanic minor scales over top of, I wasn't trying to imply anything. I just was just playing the song,
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that magic moment will ever happen again. Maybe that was it for me. Maybe that was my hit, was a video that Wayne Shorter shared on Facebook. But just knowing the power of the internet, anything can happen at any point in time. That's inspiring. I could put out a song tomorrow, and then maybe Quincy Jones is like, "Hey, man, come over and hang out," or like, you never know. So I try to encourage as many people to record and put out music because, there's just so much out there, and there's a lot of stuff that's really good that's undiscovered too. It's amazing how much music is out there that's really good. It's like almost too easy to go down that rabbit hole of like all music is bad nowadays. Because I think we're like in a really fertile time because just how easy it is to record, and the paths people have taken music to. Like we're reaching in like realms of insanity with like what people are doing with music and how many virtuosos there are. Like just like on Instagram, like. Yeah, I get a little annoyed with like the constant neo soul shit. Like, yeah, we get it, minor 9 chords or whatever. But then like you watch somebody like that Jesus Molina, that piano player, you're like, holy cow, this dude's like on the level of like some of these great classical virtuoso piano players, but like he's improvising at that degree of like technique, and like it's just insane. And then like J.D. Beck and Domi DeGaulle, like the young, like really young duo. I remember I had Domi DeGaulle for like my meme page. I had her solfege. She solfeged the Lingus solo, and then now she's like playing with like Thundercat, and like they did a video with like Ariana Grande or something for Adult Swim, and it's just the power of the internet. Like. Anything could happen. Sure. It's insane. Yeah.
So that reminds me, some years ago, like when Instagram was kind of starting, or I don't know if it was just starting, I kind of came like right before it switched from 15 seconds to 60 seconds. I sort of started a page right months before that change. So whenever that was. And I remember thinking like, man, Instagram's like the most like narcissistic page thing I've ever seen created. And but then I was like, okay, well, let's try to figure some of this out. So I like did an experiment, like to see how to grow on there or whatever. And at first I kind of had this really negative sort of attitude about it. I was like, like I said, I looked at it like, oh, it's super narcissistic, blah 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 blah. And then even like there's like so many guitar players on there, but at some point, like I started listening to more and more people, and I'm like, just like you were saying, like there's really like no lack of virtuosity like on the guitar from like every age, and it's just kind of mind-boggling. So like with a different sort of attitude, I was like, man, there's just like an endless amount of great players out there.
Yeah, and how that can affect us like mentally can sometimes be taxing, right? Because it's like it can be easy to get down on and be like, man, there's so many sick players. But for me, it's like what that tells me is the technique isn't what's special about any of us.
Oh yeah.
It's like it's our imagination and like what we do with what we can do. Like I don't think I have anywhere near like the level of technique as some guys have. Like I don't consider myself to have amazing chops or anything. But so I try not to even worry about that anymore. I think I used to. And like, cause like, yeah, like sometimes you're like, oh shit, I gotta shred to keep up. And it's fun. Like it's part of being a guitar player is that kind of stepping into the Ferrari for a minute and taking it for a spin,
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, it's like I gotta count what makes me special, and I think that's important for all of us to do, is like what makes me an individual to stand out amongst the crowd rather than so I use Instagram and social media as a tool to advertise my music, but I try not to get too caught up in the trend of what's happening in the moment,
You kind of said it. I don't know if it's totally what you meant, but ironically, there's a lot of good players on there, but man, there's a lot of just like very copy sort of thing, right? Like I couldn't tell you the difference between most of them. I think I sent something to Adam the other day. It was like from the Abasi guitar stuff, and they had some video with like 20 guitar players playing the Abasi guitar. And I'm like, they were all good, but they all, like, every single player sounded exactly the same. And I'm like, man, they were doing great stuff, It was like all this tapping, and like the whole thing they were very impressive players, but there was like almost not one, I don't want to say redeeming, but there was not like one unique thing about any of it. It was kind of weird in a way.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the journey. I think that,
sure.
It's like, for me, it's like I know for sure that I sounded way too much like Bill Frisell in college. And then I know I sounded way too much like Kurt Rosenwinkel. And not saying like that I was as good as those guys or anything by any means, but just like copying too much. But then in a way, like I had to go through that to like crack out of the little egg and hatch into a beautiful butterfly, and I might not even be there yet, but it's like I find that getting closer to that requires at some point going through some sort of metamorphosis of cloning somebody or.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
yeah, I think that like the culture of Instagram and YouTube guitar, the whole Guitar Olympics thing kind of fosters people to stay in their cocoon for longer than they need to. Because you get the instant gratification of like, I see players that are wonderfully skilled, but it's like hard to tell them apart because they don't have like a voice. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's almost like they're doing it for the praise hands, the emoji, like, oh yeah, you're doing great, bud. Like, sounds great. But it's like, for me, it's like, I don't want that. I want to feed my family, it's like, but I want to do it with my art, it's sure. So it's really kind of a wacky scenario where I think the social media also being intertwined with kind of like the commercial marketability aspect of music, like so many companies are using artists like that to hawk their products, like endorsements, like just cheap stuff, like like a capo or something, and they're like, oh, this dude that plays crazy neo soul runs endorses this capo, and it's like, wait, what? And then they'll put on their bio like, yeah, I endorse this capo, and it's like, that's cool. But it just becomes this like kind of circular feedback loop of just like crazy guitar lick, and then somebody saying, yeah, great job, and then we'll give you a free poster, and then let's do it again, and then we'll get another guy. And that's all cool, but it's almost like it's like actors or something. Like they're playing in a commercial, it's like
sure. I agree.
But I don't mean it in a negative way. I just mean it like it's just going to take some time for some of those people to break out into their breakout role where they get to finally star in a film, instead of being in the Tide commercial saying, oh, my shirt's dirty. What gets out this stain? Oh, a minor 9 chord with reverb on it, Yeah.
That is an meme. We have to figure out some way to put that in the. That would be. Oh, that's super. That's so good. That's going to piss off a lot yeah,
it great. Will, but it's okay. I've pissed off plenty of people in my time, so it's completely okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's just so many good players. But like you said, it's like I want to hear some music come out of it. I want to hear the records of those guys playing. And I'm sure some of them do have that. Maybe we just haven't stumbled onto them yet. But
somebody I was talking to recently, and I don't even remember who it was now. But it was just kind of the sort of like a lot of the heroes of guitar now, especially like the internet ones, or I say the internet, the Instagram or YouTube or whatever. It's like they don't play any gigs. They don't have any albums out. No song, not even not like one song, or maybe they did some like random fusion thing or something that they played a solo on or whatever, but it was like not their thing. And the only way that we can hear them, and some of them are good, is their like crappy YouTube video of jamming over a tune or something, or like here's the news whatever guitar that you've never heard of that costs $10,000 and they're doing, that's the only way to hear them. You can't buy any of their songs, you can't enjoy it unless you're watching a 60-second video. It's kind of a weird world we've come to.
Yeah, and I think it's weird because what COVID has done is put us all into like the same scenario a bulk of those players are in. Like we're now all in our home studio or our bedroom, and like the universe is like, joke's on you, all you guys got to do this now.
Yeah, but it's like, so you're putting out like songs though, you know what I mean? Like it's like a different mentality. Like you're thinking like there's a journey in a song. Like you have there's something that happens, but those videos really aren't about a journey. They're about that. Can you get somebody to stay on the video for 15 seconds? Like that's the game or whatever.
I wonder what the numbers really are. Like, how many guys watch that whole YouTube clip to the end? Or is it just like, you
can find those numbers. I remember, because I think I even maybe wrote like a blog post about it too, because I looked up all these numbers. And it was kind of one of those like, getting like 100 views on YouTube is worth getting like 20,000 views on Facebook. like the equivalent amount of time on average, because the way Facebook and like Instagram, they count a view is if somebody just like flicks past your thing and it sort of starts for a second and they flick to the next video, that was a view. But like YouTube doesn't do that, and you really can't do it. It's not the same kind of, it's kind of harder. You can sort of commit something, so that the average YouTube video gets watched like 2 minutes or something. The average Facebook video was like 10 seconds, and the average Instagram video was like 2 seconds.
Wow.
And so when you think, wow, I got 10,000 views on Instagram, and I only got 100 on YouTube. It's like, well, you probably did better on the YouTube things. People probably actually watched more of it. But you would think, well, I'm not going to do YouTube anymore. Like that wasn't worth it.
Right.
And you start making your Instagram videos. And so you shift even more away from like a full presentation to these little micro presentations or whatever.
You know what's really interesting is I completely stopped paying attention to any sort of numbers in terms of statistics because it yielded me no, except for Wayne Shorter, because that was cool. But like I used to worry so much about like, oh, do I have enough followers to really net me some sort of positive result? But what I realized is like, man, like no matter how many views or likes, like nothing really changes that I'm not in control of. Like ultimately everything I've gotten to do has been like completely in my hands and like not really had anything to do with any of that stuff. And like whether it's like I've gotten a few like students from Instagram or whatever that find me on there and hit me up for a few lessons, and that's cool. But it's like in terms of just like entire career, it has like little to no effect.
Oh, sure.
And I think that part of like what we're saying with like the lack of, there's like an intense amount of virtuosity, but there's a lack of artistry. And I think basically because the platform itself just encourages kind of the obsessive compulsive need to drive numbers up. So even if somebody is like totally like, yeah, this 30-second video is the shit, like I'm going to record this and see how many people like it, it doesn't encourage you to have the same amount of like love you have for a piece of art you like labored over for like months, or like a composition. And then also you don't really get a feel like, it's like such a hard thing to even like categorized, but you know, the whole thing about soulful music, like what does that mean, right? But you know, I do think like there's something to be said for like good art to happen. Like somebody has to experience a bit of life, like real life things, you know. So that's for me. It's like I don't really get a kick out of listening to child prodigies or anything. Like they're fun to watch, but they just haven't experienced enough life to have all the dirt in their playing that they need. You know, it's like they haven't had their heart broken. They haven't feared death. They haven't like experienced loss. They haven't experienced exuberant joy, like having a child or you know, wrecking a car or like any of these like life experiences
eating a rat
that
off the road.
eating a rat off the side of the road, or like, you know, falling off of a horse in the Ecuadorian mountains, you know, because you're drunk. That never happened to me. But
the whole like sleeping on the couch and sleeping in your car.
Yep.
Exactly. But it's yeah. When I hear Instagram guitar players, I just don't hear any of that. You know, it's just I really don't. And like especially it's like prevalent in like that kind of prog metal, which I love prog and I love metal, but like there's an inherent sameness to all that music because it's almost like created like out of a lack of emotional connection sometimes for me, and it's like hard to connect with. Which for me, and even in that genre, I'm more into like Mr. Bungle or something.
Oh yeah.
Or more so than like super technical metal because like I can connect to the humor in it, the dark humor, and like the texture
and everything. Yeah.
I feel like I can chew on it. You know, I can feel like I can bite into it, and like it's gonna taste like two Rally's burgers just smashed together and like coated in like Hershey's chocolate syrup and like funfetti sprinkled on top with hot mustard and it's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I was expecting a rat joke to be in there for some second.
I mean, it's a rat based sauce that you dip it in.
All right.
I had to marinate for a while.
Yeah.
Got to bring it back full circle. You know, we started with the post-apocalyptic rats. We should be ending with that.
That reminds me, we did put that meme out the other day too, where it's like you can. Surely you can play something other than prog and fusion with a headless guitar.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't be like the automatic, like that's all that anyone ever plays on those instruments.
Well, you should be able to play haunted music because the Headless Horseman, right? Like you should be able to play spooky carnival music for sure. Why isn't
there more death metal with it?
Exactly. I really want a headless guitar really bad. I think they're rad.
They're rad. I want one too. I don't have one. I think it'd be great to travel too.
Yeah, well, it's super light. That's the first thing. Super light. Like weighs less than my 6-string here, which, you know, that's
yeah.
And then this thing is like it's as light as my classical. My classical is super, like maybe 5 pounds, and this is like there's nothing to it, which is great. And it's not a hollowed out body, you know. It's a solid swamp ash type of thing. I mean, swamp ash is light, but still, you know. So losing the headstock clearly lightens it up. But my big thing with it is, you know, I primarily play classical, so I'm always in this position. And doing this with an electric guitar, like a standard one, you're not going to do that. But this is sitting with the footstool. It just like boom, right there. The jack is out of the way. I thought that it wasn't going to be clear, you know, in my leg area, and I'm going to have this cable digging in my leg. I was getting upset before I plugged it in and set it down. I'm like, oh, or not. Never mind. You know, and it's just exactly how I sit and practice classically would be with this. And I'm not holding it. It's great. Super awesome. You know, it's got the little dad bod tummy cut there and everything else. So
man.
It's great.
That's sick. Do you have it tuned with 2 lower strings, or do you have 1 higher string as well?
2 lower. 2
nice.
Lower. Yeah, I'm just going. Cool. I do it in the standard 8-string F sharp B, and then the standard guitar tuning. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, I think the higher string's hard. Like,
I can't see that.
I had a 9-string once, and I could never get it to go any higher because plus it was 30-inch scale.
Oh,
yeah. There's like no chance.
Yeah.
Do you have a size 3 by chance?
Yeah.
The strongest 3 ever. Yeah.
It's gonna be like a horse hair, you know, just to be able to
I need one
back.
of Superman's hairs.
Can you imagine like 40 years in the future when the equivalent of like boomers now are like arguing on guitar forums about like what gauge strings Tosin Abasi used, like we do with Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah, right.
Like no man, Tosin used 8 gauges Diodarios, but he had to like bathe them in like Malaysian goat milk before every show. Like he only used batteries that were used by little grandmas in Southeast Dakota from a Magnavox remote, and he'd put those into the remote foot switch for his Axe effects, and that's how he got that tone.
Right.
Holy crap! That's the most elaborate thing I've heard in a long Magnavox. Oh my god! Me brain. It's like this obscure thing.
But it's true. It's the God honest truth.
Yeah,
It's true.
I think that's a great spot to end. As much as I would love this conversation to keep going.
All right, quick. What's coming out next? You kind of mentioned little things. Where can people find you? All those kind of things.
So I got a bunch of music out. It's all on all the normal places like Spotify and Apple Music. But if you really want to be a true believer and a true artist helper person, which means you're a good person, is go to Bandcamp and you can find all the music on there. Brandon Coleman .bandcamp.com or sphericalagenda.bandcamp.com. Next things on the docket to release, Sam Blakeslee project Wistful Thinking, which is me, Sam, Matt Wiles, and Chris Coles. It's chamber jazz. We did an acoustic album and an electric album, and those are going to come out on Outside In Music, I think it's called. It's a label out of New York. And that'll be out in the summer, I think July, I think we're looking at.
That's 2 different albums?
Yeah, so the first one, the acoustic one will be out in the summer, and then the electric one will be out in the fall.
Heck yeah.
And then we just finished mixing the Spherical Agenda full-length album. We put out a few singles, but we just finished mixing the whole album, and we're in the process of shopping that to some labels for the moment. But we may end up just going the self-release route, just because, I don't know, I like having control of things, as we discussed. But and I've got several new recordings of my own over the coming months that I'm probably going to drop. I've got several new quartet recordings. I've got this Fourth Kind project. I'm doing a couple duo tracks with Noah Preminger over
nice.
The web that we're working on. That's going to be fun.
Noah is a just unreal sax player. And
yeah, he's otherworldly.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Out of Boston.
And then, I've got a track that should be done soon. That's a tribute to John Abercrombie with Matt Wiles, and then I got Lisa Belladonna's playing keys on it,
Nice.
and then Colin Stranahan on drums. He's got to record his part. But that one might be a minute because I know those are all busy people. But that one's in the works. Lots of just like little single things I'm going to be putting out over the coming months. Just I've got time. I'm sitting here producing this stuff, and to me, this has been a very productive time for me. And for all the negative things that's happened over the last year, it's been a good. Well, I don't want to say good, but it's been a good opportunity for me to revamp some things to allow me to be even more productive. So grateful for that for sure. So be on the lookout for lots of good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, fellas. It's been great to talk to you guys.
Yeah,
and
it was great.
Yeah, it's super fun, and all the best, and wish you guys the best in health and happiness and picking, and hope you get a good rat tomorrow. Get a flavorful one.
As long as the string and the guts come together well with it, I'm happy.
What was that
my favorite
salt bath thing you were telling me about, Adam, with the steaks or whatever? You got to do that with the rat.
Oh, the dry brining. Yep. That dude, I just did that today. Well, I did that yesterday, and I had the steak today. It was amazing.
I usually just hang out near the beach, and they're already brined from the salt water.
There you go. That's
and I like.
Is that
I like going down to
Cincinnati
like
beach?
Yeah, Cincinnati, the Ohio River salt water. If you go a little further south, you can get like a Chipotle Southwest rat.
That's amazing.
Oh man, there's just so many flavors, you know.
That's good.
All over the place. The Italian meatball rat, it's great. You know,
It's like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Demolition Man, right? You ever see that?
Oh man, it's been a minute, but it's a crazy movie.
Taco Bell won the what was it? Taco Bell won the
They won the franchise war.
Yeah,
Oh man,
classic.
Well, thanks, dude.
thanks for having me, fellas. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to hanging when everything's back to normal.
Yeah, amen to that for sure.
I'm getting vaccinated next week, so
Oh, heck
I'm
yeah.
stoked.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. So next time you see me, my arm will be like really big, and I'll have really good 5G reception. It'll be great.
Exactly.
We'll put our hand on your head and we'll be good.
Yep.
Yeah.